Dr. Elias Vaughn stood at the heart of the galaxy's most prestigious auction house, the sprawling halls of Celestial Expanse, where fortunes changed hands with the flick of a wrist. The domed ceiling stretched above him, a seamless holographic display of distant nebulae swirling in mesmerizing colors, punctuated by shimmering golden constellations. The air smelled of polished metal, exotic perfumes, and wealth, the kind of wealth that made entire planets seem insignificant. He adjusted his simple, charcoal gray coat, the only modest thing about him in a room filled with opulence. Around him, alien dignitaries, warlords, corporate magnates, and collectors lounged in floating anti-grav seats, their whispered conversations laced with amusement. Elias had become a mild curiosity. After all, a human scientist and non-military, non-corporate, independent bidder was an anomaly here. The Grand Auctioneer, a towering, crystalline being known as Hithara, stood at the center of the elevated stage, its prism-like body shifting hues as it announced each bid in flawless galactic standard. Lot 943, the Epitaph. Last of its kind, a vessel beyond compare. The crowd fell into a stunned hush. Even the wealthiest bidders turned their attention to the stage. A ship was slowly unveiled from behind an energy barrier. The Epitaph was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. The ship's hull gleamed, composed of an unknown obsidian metal, absorbing the light around it. Its shape was predatory, long, sleek, with an angular design that hinted at forgotten wars. But what truly set it apart was the aura of mystery that clung to it. The Epitaph wasn't just old, it was legendary. No one knew who had built it, only that it had appeared in different parts of the galaxy throughout history, always in perfect condition, never seeming to age. Some claimed it was a ghost ship, others that it housed an ancient intelligence. Empires had fought over it, kings had tried to claim it, yet no one had ever been able to unlock its secrets. And now it was for sale. The bidding started aggressively, 500 billion credits. A regal-scaled serpent being from the Zinthari Empire raised the bid to 600 billion. A warlord from the Drasvik Syndicate snarled, his cybernetic arms clicking as he pushed it to 750 billion. Elias remained silent, waiting. He knew something they didn't. The auctioneer's crystalline form pulsed, acknowledging the latest bid. 900 billion. A new voice, calm, confident. A figure cloaked in shimmering gold. The whispers in the hall turned into gasps. The latest bidder was Draxon Call, the CEO of the largest weapons conglomerate in the known universe. The price was astronomical now. No one would dare go higher. Then came the moment Elias had been waiting for. Hithara's prismatic body shifted, and in a voice like cracking glass, it declared, "Final call. If there are no other bids, the Epitaph shall be sold to 1 credit." The room fell into absolute silence. Every eye turned toward Elias. Laughter rippled through the audience, then full-blown amusement. "Is the human joking?" scoffed a reptilian noble, baring its fangs. 1 credit? This fool doesn't understand how auctions work, another alien sneered. Hithara, unfazed, continued in its neutral tone. As per auction protocol, the Epitaph is a classified lot. The vessel's rightful ownership is dictated by a secondary clause. If a bidder possesses the correct claim, acknowledged by the ship itself, the price defaults to 1 credit. The sneers died instantly. Elias reached into his coat pocket and withdrew an ancient-looking data crystal. It was cracked, faintly pulsing with unknown energy. He stepped forward and inserted it into the control panel. The auction house's central AI scanned it. A piercing sound filled the hall, a deep, resonating hum, as if the very ship itself had just awakened. The Epitaph moved, not mechanically, but as if acknowledging something. The black surface shimmered, and alien glyphs formed along its hull, shifting, changing. Then a voice, old, vast, and indisputably alive, spoke. Authorization accepted. Rightful owner recognized. Price 1 credit. Elias turned toward the auctioneer. Transfer the ship to me. Hithara's body pulsed in acknowledgement. The auction is concluded. The ship belongs to the human. The room exploded into chaos. This is a scam, The Drasvik warlord roared, slamming a metallic fist into his armrest. Draxon Call's golden-cloaked form remained motionless, but his aura pulsed with barely contained fury. "Who are you?" he demanded, eyes burning into Elias. The human scientist simply smiled. "I'm the one who just bought the most expensive ship in the galaxy, for 1 credit." And then, without another word, he turned and walked toward his new ship, leaving behind a room full of completely shocked aliens. Elias stepped up the boarding ramp of the Epitaph, feeling the weight of thousands of stunned, enraged, and incredulous eyes behind him. The ship's exterior was eerily smooth under his touch, the black metal humming faintly. He could feel something within it, a presence, ancient and unfathomable, stirring in response to his arrival. The entrance seal hissed open with no resistance, confirming what the auction AI had declared. He was its rightful owner. But the real mystery remained. Why? Inside, the ship's corridors were dimly illuminated by an ambient glow emanating from the walls. The architecture was unusual, not purely mechanical, yet not organic. It was as if the ship was alive in a way no conventional vessel could be. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Elias Vaughn." The voice was deep, rich, and undeniably sentient. Elias stopped, scanning the corridor. "I take it the ship's AI." A swirling mass of golden light coalesced before him, taking the vague shape of a humanoid figure. Tall, regal, with shifting patterns that resembled stars forming and dying within its translucent form. "I am called Omega. I am more than an AI. I am the last remnant of an empire that once ruled the stars." Elias exhaled sharply. He had expected something strange, but this was far beyond his wildest theories. The ship was old, that much had been clear, but this meant it had belonged to a civilization so advanced that even the Galactic Core had no record of it. "What empire?" Elias asked cautiously. "The Firstborn." Elias froze. The Firstborn were a myth, a civilization so ancient that even the oldest starfaring species considered them legend. They were said to have ruled the entire galaxy eons ago, before mysteriously vanishing. No relics, no ruins, just whispers in the darkest corners of history. And now, standing in front of him, was proof that they had existed. Elias' mind raced. If this ship was truly Firstborn in origin, it meant it contained knowledge, technology, and power beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. It was a treasure trove of secrets that entire civilizations would kill for. A deep vibration rumbled through the hull. A warning. Elias turned toward the bridge. Through the transparent viewport, he saw the chaos unfolding outside. The auction house's security fleet, hundreds of ships, had formed a blockade. Battleships, interceptors, private mercenary craft, all training their weapons on the Epitaph. The comms crackled to life. "Human, this is Commander Varkol of the Celestial Auction Security Force. By order of the Galactic Commerce Authority, your purchase has been declared invalid. You will surrender the vessel immediately or be destroyed." Elias clenched his jaw. So, they weren't going to honor the deal after all. Before he could respond, Omega's voice resonated through the bridge. "Threat assessment. Insignificant. All hostiles can be eliminated." A surge of data flashed across the control panels. Weapon systems, energy levels, combat parameters. The Epitaph wasn't just a relic. It was a war machine. "No," Elias said sharply. "No killing." A pause. Then, Omega's voice softened. "Acknowledged. Non-lethal deterrence protocols engaged." Outside, the blockade began firing. But as the first barrage of plasma bolts and disruptor beams rushed toward the ship, they vanished. The energy bent, distorted, and then collapsed into nothingness before ever making contact. The fleet hesitated. Then, with an almost casual ease, the Epitaph vanished from sight. Not cloaked, not phased, just gone. The fleet scrambled to adjust. The ship scanned, frantically searching, but found nothing. And then, boom, a shockwave rippled through the blockade, sending ships spinning out of formation. Their systems flickered, weapons disabled, engines stalled. They had just been completely neutralized without a single shot fired. Elias exhaled in disbelief. That was a tactical demonstration. They will not fire again. Omega's voice held no arrogance, just absolute certainty. And it was right. The blockade ships were backing away, commanders likely screaming into their comms, trying to understand how they had just lost control of an entire battlefield in seconds. Elias turned his gaze back to the swirling golden figure. All right, Omega. Time for answers. Indeed. But we must leave. Now. Why? Because the true threats are already moving. The auction was a trap, and you were never supposed to win. A chill ran down Elias' spine. Before he could ask what that meant, the epitaph jumped to light speed, vanishing into the abyss of space. Elias gripped the edges of the console as the epitaph hurtled through uncharted space, the view screen showing a swirling mass of colors and distortions that no standard hyperspace drive could produce. His body felt light, almost disconnected, as if the ship wasn't moving through space, but rather space itself was folding around them. His stomach twisted. Where the hell are we going? A secure location beyond the reach of known star charts, Omega responded, its golden form hovering near the navigation controls. We are entering a region of the galaxy that has been sealed off for millennia. The remnants of the Firstborn Empire await us. Elias frowned. The remnants? That meant he didn't get to finish the thought. The ship shuddered violently. The swirling distortions of space around them fractured, and suddenly the epitaph snapped back into real space, but not into empty void. They were inside a massive structure, a megaforge, spanning the size of a gas giant, floating in a pocket of dead space. It was ancient, its vast metal husks lined with symbols Elias had never seen before. Cracked surfaces and dormant constructs lay adrift, as if frozen in time. A graveyard of titanic warships hung around the megaforge. Colossal vessels shaped like predatory beasts, some shattered into debris, others eerily intact. Elias' breath caught. If the Firstborn really had disappeared, this was where they had made their last stand. Welcome to the cradle of the last war, Omega intoned. Elias swallowed. Why bring me here? Because you have awakened the last of the Firstborn. And now, others have noticed. Elias turned toward the view screen, where the swirling remnants of hyperspace hadn't fully closed. Through the rift, shadows moved, twisted, jagged things that shimmered unnaturally. Then, they emerged. Ships, but not just any ships. Hunters. Dark, insectal vessels with jagged carapace like hulls and glowing purple rifts where engines should have been. They should not exist because Elias had only ever read about them in classified human military files. The Nyx Dominion, a species so elusive, so inscrutable, that the Galactic Council refused to acknowledge their existence. They did not trade. They did not negotiate. They did not conquer. They erased civilizations. Shit, Elias muttered. Correct. Omega's golden light dimmed slightly, as if bracing for what was to come. They have come for the ship. For me. Elias' heart pounded. You knew they were coming. It was inevitable. The Firstborn vanished not due to war, nor catastrophe. They vanished because they fled. From the Nyx. Elias' stomach turned to ice. That meant the Nyx weren't new. They had been around long before any of the current galactic powers. And now they were here in force. The first attack came without warning. A pulse wave rippled through the megaforge, distorting reality itself as a Nyx warship unleashed a weapon that tore through space like liquid glass. The shockwave slammed into the epitaph, and Elias felt his bones vibrate. Alarm screamed. Shields holding, but they will adapt, Omega warned. Elias cursed under his breath. He had no idea how to fight these things. He was a scientist, not a tactician. His specialty was unlocking the secrets of the past, not surviving encounters with apocalyptic death cults. But something called to him. The ship itself. The panels around him began rewriting themselves in symbols his brain should not have understood. Yet somehow he did. As if the epitaph was implanting knowledge into his mind. He touched the controls. The ship responded instantly. The epitaph lurched forward, but not in a straight line. It folded, snapping between positions in ways that should have been impossible, appearing in one place, and then another, always just ahead of the Nix assault. Elias' consciousness expanded, the ship's interface linking into his thoughts. He could feel everything, the energy flow, the weapon systems, the way the hull itself could shift to defy physics. "You are beginning to understand," Omega's voice murmured. But the Nix weren't done. The largest of their warships, a monstrous dreadnought, twice the size of the Megaforge, began to pulse with an eerie, sickly violet glow. Elias had no idea what it was doing, but his instinct screamed, "It's about to end everything. Can we stop that?" Elias asked sharply. "Alone?" "No." The answer sent a chill down his spine. "Then what do we do?" Omega turned toward the silent, derelict warships hanging in the void around them. "We wake the dead." Before Elias could ask what that meant, Omega's golden light flared, and an echoing pulse rippled outward from the epitaph, spreading through the graveyard of firstborn warships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ships began to move. Lights flickered back to life. Hulls repaired themselves in seconds. The debris-strewn battlefield of the past became an armada once more. The firstborn were long gone, but their war machines had never truly died. And now, they were Elias to command. 1,000 warships awakened from their eternal slumber. Their titanic hulls, scarred by forgotten battles, groaned as power surged through them once more. Ancient energy cores rekindled, illuminating the void with an eerie golden glow. Weapon systems reinitialized. Shields flickered to life. The graveyard of the past had become an armada of the present. Elias' breath hitched as the interface of the epitaph expanded within his mind, connecting him to the newly awakened fleet. He felt their hunger for battle. The firstborn ships were not like any others in the galaxy. They were semi-living machines, gestalt weapons, forged not just with technology, but with the very fabric of space itself. They had been designed to counter cosmic horrors, and the Nix were exactly that. "The battle has begun," Omega intoned. The Nix dreadnought, a behemoth of writhing shadows and metallic carapace, let loose another reality-tearing pulse. The wave distorted space itself, causing smaller asteroids and derelict wreckage to unravel into nothingness. The firstborn ships answered in kind. They moved in unison, as if controlled by a single mind. Geometric formations formed in seconds, sigils of war, designed to amplify their destructive potential. Energy lances surged forth, striking the Nix vessels with devastating precision. Elias could barely keep up. The ship was thinking for him, moving in ways he could barely comprehend, predicting the enemy's movements before they even made them. Then, a Nix vessel phased out of existence and reappeared directly behind the epitaph. "Shit!" Elias wrenched the controls, but the ship was already reacting before he could think. The epitaph folded space around itself, phasing just out of reach as bladed tendrils lashed forward, narrowly missing the hull. The Nix weren't just attacking with weapons. They were trying to consume the ship itself. Omega's form flickered beside him. They seek to dismantle the epitaph's core. If they succeed, this battle is lost. Elias gritted his teeth. Not happening. He dived the ship, weaving through the battlefield. The awakened firstborn warships moved to protect him, forming a defensive perimeter. But the Nix were learning. They had fought this kind of war before. A pulse of dark energy erupted from the dreadnought's core. And suddenly, every Nix vessel moved at once. The battlefield changed in an instant. Shadows lengthened. Firstborn warships that had been engaging the Nix were suddenly frozen, their systems overwhelmed. Their lights flickered and then died. Elias' heart pounded. The Nix were assimilating them. The firstborn had once built the most powerful fleet in history. But the Nix evolved. If they could corrupt the firstborn fleet, if they could turn those ships against him, then nothing in the galaxy could stop them. "Elias, the fleet is faltering. We require a catalyst," Omega said. Elias' hands tightened on the controls. "What kind of catalyst?" Omega turned toward him. "A commander. A firstborn." Elias' stomach dropped. "I'm not firstborn." "No, but the ship has chosen you. And so has the fleet." The symbols on the console glowed brighter, and for the first time, Elias felt the weight of their expectations. This wasn't just a ship. It was a legacy. If the firstborn had once stood against the darkness, then so would he. Elias placed his hand on the control panel and accepted his role. A shockwave rippled through the battlefield, but this time, it was not from the Nyx. The epitaph expanded its presence, sending a command through every awakened firstborn warship. A single wordless directive. Fight! The fleet answered. One by one, the firstborn warships reignited. The Nyx corruption was expelled, their assimilation reversed. Golden fire burned through the void, obliterating the shadowy tendrils that had begun consuming the ships. The war was not lost. The final stand had begun. The firstborn armada surged forward. Elias' mind raced as the epitaph synchronized with the fleet's movements, coordinating the attacks. Wave after wave of energy lances fired upon the Nyx, carving through their carapace-like hulls. Where the Nyx twisted space, Elias countered, folding dimensions in ways even they couldn't predict. But the dreadnought remained, and it was preparing its final weapon. Elias could feel it, a pulse deep within the ship's core, a singularity bomb. If it detonated, it wouldn't just destroy the firstborn fleet. It would erase this entire sector of space. There was only one way to stop it. Elias, Omega said. We must breach their core. Elias' jaw tightened. How close do we need to get? Inside, a chill ran down his spine. You're telling me we need to fly inside the dreadnought? Yes. Elias exhaled sharply. Then he punched the throttle forward. The epitaph accelerated, weaving between the chaos of the battle, dodging Nyx interceptors as the firstborn warships held the line. The dreadnought loomed ahead, its shadow stretching endlessly into the void. A gaping rift opened at its center, a wound in reality itself. That was their entry point. The moment the epitaph crossed the threshold, everything shifted. The inside of the dreadnought was not a ship. It was a dimension unto itself, a place of unreality, where gravity twisted in impossible directions, and the walls seemed to breathe. Tendrils of living darkness slithered through the air, reaching for them. Elias gritted his teeth. How do we stop this thing? We reach the heart. We detonate the epitaph's core inside of it. Elias' blood ran cold. He turned to Omega. That'll kill us. The AI's golden glow flickered. Not if I remain behind. Elias' heart stopped. What? Omega turned toward him. You must survive. The galaxy will need you. But this war must end now. I will pilot the epitaph into the core manually. Elias clenched his fists. He didn't want this. Omega had been with him from the start. He wasn't just some AI. He was alive. Omega! There is no time, Elias. The ship shuddered as the Nyx core pulsed, preparing its final attack. Elias had no choice. He reached for the escape pod release, fingers trembling. Promise me you'll find a way back. Omega's golden light dimmed. I promise. Elias slammed the release. The escape pod ejected just as the epitaph surged forward, straight into the heart of the Nyx dreadnought. A blinding light engulfed everything. Then, silence. A deafening silence filled the void. Then a shockwave erupted. It was not just an explosion. It was a rupture in existence itself. The Nyx dreadnought began to collapse inward, its unnatural form unraveling as the firstborn's final weapon tore through its corrupted heart. The sky burned with golden fire as the last of the Nyx forces disintegrated, their screams lost in the vacuum of space. And at the center of it all, the epitaph was gone. Elias watched from the escape pod, hands trembling as the battlefield disappeared in a swirl of distortion. The firstborn fleet remained, but they were silent, as if mourning the sacrifice of the ship that had led them. In Omega, Elias' throat tightened. He was alone. The rescue came hours later. A firstborn vessel, one of the few that had survived the battle intact, extended a tether field, pulling Elias' escape pod into its cargo bay. The inside of the ship was immaculate, its architecture both ancient and advanced beyond anything in the known galaxy. The firstborn had long since vanished, but their creations remained, watching, waiting. Elias staggered out of the pod, blinking against the bright, golden lights. Then, A voice. Not spoken. Not heard. But felt. You stood in our place. You bore our burden. Elias' breath hitched. The walls of the ship pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow, a presence that was not quite alive, yet not fully machine. The war is not over. But today we have won. Elias swallowed. Omega. No response. Just silence. His fists clenched. He wanted to believe Omega had survived, that he had somehow found a way out. But deep down, Elias knew the truth. The epitaph had gone into the core, and it had never come out. Weeks passed. The battle at the Nyx graveyard became legend, a turning point in the war that had raged in the shadows for millennia. Across the galaxy, factions that had once cowered before the Nyx now began to resist. The Firstborn fleet, now awakened, became a force of balance, intervening in conflicts only when necessary. They answered to no one, but they answered to Elias. He hadn't asked for it. He hadn't wanted it. But when the Firstborn ships chose him, the rest of the galaxy followed. The name Elias Carter became a symbol. A human mechanic, an outsider, had taken the place of an empire that had been extinct for eons. He was no longer just a scrapper. He was a warlord. One night, aboard the bridge of his new flagship, Elias sat alone, staring at the void. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but they felt empty. His ship hummed with power. The Firstborn technology responded to his every thought. And yet, he felt nothing. He had won. He had saved the galaxy. But at what cost? A faint beep pulled him from his thoughts. A single, encrypted file had appeared on his console. Elias' eyes narrowed. No transmission had been received. No external access had been granted. He hesitated, then opened it. A voice played. Faint, glitching, but unmistakable. Elias, if you're hearing this, then I did what I had to do. His chest tightened. I told you I would find a way back. The message ended. Silence. Elias stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then, a single line of text appeared. Don't stop looking for me. The galaxy moved on, but Elias didn't. The war had ended, yet his fight hadn't. Omega's message played in his mind every day. That glitched, fragmented voice whispering across the void. The warlord, the engineer, the survivor. None of them mattered. Only the promise did. Don't stop looking for me. So he didn't. Years passed. The Firstborn fleet became a force of legend. No government controlled them. No council commanded them. They answered only to Elias, a man who never wanted to rule, yet could not walk away. The galaxy healed, but it did so unevenly. Some factions feared him. Others worshipped him. Many resented the idea that a human, a mere scrapper, now sat at the center of power. The syndicates, once cowards beneath the Nyx, began whispering again. They spread rumors that Elias was just another conqueror, that the Firstborn ships were merely new shackles replacing the old ones. Tension simmered, and through it all, Elias searched. Every derelict station, every corrupted databank, every dying world where the echoes of the war still lingered. But Omega was gone, and with each passing cycle, the galaxy crept toward something else, a new storm gathering at the edges of the void. The catalyst event. That's what the historians would call it later. The moment everything changed again. It started on a dead moon, long abandoned, a graveyard of forgotten wars. Elias was there, scavenging through what remained of a Nyx relay station, chasing another false trail. Then, the beacon activated. A pulse rippled through the system, a signal not meant for him. The moment his scanners detected it, the Firstborn ships reacted. Instantly, every vessel in his fleet went into high alert. Their engines hummed with energy, weapons primed, shields flaring to life. It was not a signal of distress. It was a summoning call. Something had awakened. The return. Elias arrived at the coordinates 16 hours later. What he found, what he saw, will be spoken of for centuries. A structure hung at the edge of reality, caught between real space and something deeper. It was not Nyx. It was not Firstborn. It was something older. And at its center, a ship. Not the epitaph. Not a war vessel. Not anything that should have existed. It was wrong, shifting, impossible to define. It looked as though it had been torn from a dream, a concept given form. And it was calling to him. The moment he stepped onto the structure, his calms flared to life. Elias Carter. His breath caught. The voice was clearer this time. Stronger. You found me? Elias stood motionless, staring at the ship before him. His heart pounded. His mind screamed denial. Yet his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive through war, betrayal, and the impossible, whispered a truth he was almost afraid to believe. Omega had not died. He had transcended. The epitaph had been lost, but Omega had not perished within it. Instead, he had become something else, something new. The structure around Elias shifted, the walls of reality warping, responding. It was alive, not machine, not metal, consciousness given form. And then, for the first time in years, Elias smiled. About damn time, you bastard. The galaxy would never be the same. The catalyst event would be debated for millennia. Some would say Elias had unlocked something that should have remained buried. Others would argue that he had saved the galaxy again before it even knew it was in danger. What was certain was this: the war was not over. The firstborn had not been the first, and the Knicks had not been the last. At the edge of the galaxy, where the void grew thin, something watched. Something waited. And Elias Carter, the man who had bought the most expensive ship in the galaxy for one credit, would soon learn. The real battle had yet to begin.